Okay, I want to start off by giving all praises to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashim, Rakat Kwadash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone who teach the Bible in 100% truth, and Shalom to the hopeful elect of the 12 tribes of Israel. Shalom to you. Okay, today I'm going to try and make this as short as possible, and this is based on the topic of Revelation 13:16, the MOTB. Now, I've just finished a night shift. I've just come back off a night shift, so I'm a little bit tired. So forgive me if I'm a bit slow with it. But I just came across this particular post from GMS Virginia North, and I had a little watch. As you can see, what the title is here. This is from the channel Redacted, and this is posted. They put this up on their channel 4 days ago. So this was posted this morning by GMS Virginia North, and I had a quick look at the video. I will put the link in the description box just in case you haven't seen it. But watching what was said in this particular video prompted me to say a couple of words based around this particular subject to make a particular point. So I'm going to go into that now real quickly while there's nobody in the house at the minute, so it's probably the best time to get this made right now. So, and I've mentioned before the MOTB, Revelation 13 and 16, and I've mentioned the fact that there are many aspects to this particular subject. So, you could go to that one particular chapter, those precepts, and read about the MOTB and get the basics of it, and understand what it's about. But then there are many precepts in the Bible, and there are also many other aspects of things around the world that you can connect to this particular prophecy to understand. And it's all, quite simple. If you take each individual part of information that all connects up to this one individual big prophecy taking place, it's quite easy to understand. A lot of people, maybe they don't believe in it because they haven't, people have been told the basics, but it hasn't been broken down to a certain level. And what you have to do with this particular subject is good to, like I say, the word is compartmentalize. Take one particular part of it, understand it, and then move on to another part. For example, understand what the prophecy means. Go through that particular chapter and look at the original text that the scripture was written in and understand what's really said. And then you can, for example, go to read about the hour of temptation and understand that is connected with this particular prophecy. Then you can go to Jacob's trouble, read about that, and that will connect to this. And certain parts of Matthew chapter 24 also and point towards the time when this particular prophecy is going to be taking place. So you can go into all these different particular subjects and talk about them, break them down, and understand that it connects to this particular prophecy. And when you understand all these little individual parts, obviously it brings your understanding, makes it stronger, and then ultimately, with a stronger understanding, ultimately that leads back into a stronger faith that you have of understanding what's going on and understanding, how important it is to hold firm in that hour of temptation. So I'm going to go into one of those particular topics today. And like I say, it's based on that particular video here. This is posted this morning. And I've just come back off of a night shift and I just came across this particular video. It was posted by GMS Virginia North. And the video is actually on the channel Redacted. And you can see the title here. Now I will put the link in the description box for you to have a look afterwards if you haven't seen it already. But watching it myself, there was one particular point that stood out in my mind, and like I say, I thought I wanted to just put a few words to it to understand one particular aspect that obviously goes into fulfilling this prophecy taking place. Now, When you talk about this particular thing, we know we have this particular situation. I mean, we have the initial situation. If you look on the screen now, I'm going to try to avoid particular keywords. So if you look at the screen, you can see what I'm talking about. And we have this particular situation that seems to have come and gone in the West, in the Western world for now. Obviously, it's still existing in the situation is existing in the Far East. And, we're trying to work out what's actually happening, what the next steps are going to be based on the experience that we had. And, when this particular situation took place, there were it was various bits of information were brought out and said, oh, this was spoken of many years ago. And so looking forward to the next particular event, and it's good to watch this video because obviously now we know what to look out for when it happens again. We kind of have an idea of what to experience, and we know that people are going to probably talk about it before it happens, people in certain positions. So that's one really good reason to watch this particular video here. And like I say, there's a particular point in the video which stood out in my mind, which is what I'm going to go into today. And like I say, when we talk about the fulfillment of this particular prophecy, Revelation 13 and 16, digital identification and money, format of monetary exchange, if you like, way of buying and selling. This is pretty much, to have the final piece of the jigsaw to this particular prophecy put in place. You're going to see this particular thing here handed out to people who are willing to accept it. And I've gone into this before, and ultimately this is going to be placed under the skin in order to scan and use it to buy and sell. Now, obviously, according to the scriptures, this could be placed in the hand or the forehead, and it's most likely that people who have it placed in the forehead have some sort of disability, and so with that, as the scriptures tell you, the the physical counterpart of the devil, if you like, will make miracles happen. So that is obviously through the technology that they're gonna use by implementing one of these particular things into the forehead. And so with that, a lot of things have to, they can't just place one thing in the forehead and make it happen. Other things have to happen to the body, for example, in order to make this work. So this is, when we talk about this particular thing here, we're talking about the fulfillment of that particular prophecy, Revelation 13, 16, 17, and 18. And at the minute, like I say, we've had this situation where we've had this scenario taking place, and now we're hearing about this next particular scenario, and which, in fact, when you watch that video, this is what they called it. This is apparently what it's going to be called. I mean, they've written down here, this is a fictional scenario, but obviously this message is coming from this particular man here. So, and quite clearly, as it says there, this is the next big thing that's to happen. So this is what it's due to be called. So, we've had this situation occur, and now we're due to have this situation occur in 2025. And then I've explained many times that there's, we have, like I say, the fulfillment of the prophecy, which is ultimately to have this particular thing on the screen under your skin. But at the minute, the powers that be seem intent on pushing these particular things under the skin. And this all goes back to the root word of the word mark in scripture, Revelation 13 and 16, which is charagma, incision into the skin. So you have to make it clear in your understanding that there's a particular scenario going on when they're, trying to feed you what you can see on the screen. They're trying to get you to take particular tests. And now they have another particular scenario that is due to take place very soon. So we can see this particular thing, and you may sort of ask, well, what's this connected to this particular device that's supposed to be placed under the skin in order to buy and sell, the identification? and it and that's the point I'm trying to make. I'm trying to like differentiate between the two things, because a lot of people look at the events that have happened in the last 2.5 years, 3 years, and they say that, that is the fulfillment of the prophecy. But it's not. It is part of the prophecy, but it's a part of the process. The fulfillment is the actual, as you can see on the screen, this particular chip. Now, when you look at this particular scenario that took place in 2020, went on to 2021, really 2022, the powers that be that were pushing this then told you you need to have these updates. And so the title for this video is, your software needs an update. Ultimately, when you check what an update is, it's similar to what a booster is. Now we read description B of booster, and it says here, an auxiliary device for increasing force, power, pressure, or effectiveness. Okay, so when they hit you with scenario one, over the last 2 years, they then, try to convince you that it was all about this particular thing here on the screen. They then said, you need to come in to have an auxiliary device for increasing force, power, pressure, or effectiveness. So they said, you've had that initial thing. Now you need to come in to, number 1, 2, 3, 4. And what you're doing, you're getting some people call it a top up, some people call it a booster. Ultimately, it's an auxiliary device for increasing force, power, pressure, or effectiveness of whatever it was that they put in you initially. So, ultimately, this goes forth to changing your DNA. And, there will come another scenario, as you can see here, where they will create another excuse to come out with something else. And then once they place that particular thing, if they were to get that far and they were to place that thing within you, they would then say to you, you need updates. You need to update your software, that particular part of the software that they give you. So each one of these things, when you're looking at this, for example, and you're going from one scenario to 2021 to 2022 scenario, then you're going to go to the 2025 scenario. These are all things that are designed to manipulate your internals. And then obviously once you've given these particular things, they then need to be given auxiliary devices in order to help them do what they're supposed to do. Now, again, you might wonder, what it's all got to do with this particular device here that they're looking to place in your hand or in your forehead. And it all comes back down to connection and having a connection. So, they're putting these particular things, again, as I'm saying on the screen, they're putting these particular things into you, and then, or they want to, and then they're saying, come in so we can strengthen, increase the force, the power, the pressure, and the effectiveness. And ultimately what it's doing, something within you is mutating and growing. Okay? And I've gone into this before, what you can see on the screen. You watch, I think it's called Died Suddenly. Someone sent it to me. I haven't actually watched it yet, but I kind of got a good idea that I kind of already know what's in it. But I will watch it hopefully in the next couple of days, actually. But I've been kind of trying to give this message out from before that particular video came out anyway. So to me, it doesn't really make much difference. You can see what's on the screen. This is what they're pulling out of people who got involved in this first particular scenario. And those people, I bet you that they went back, 1, 2, 3, 4 times to increase the force, power, pressure, or effectiveness. And ultimately what it's done is it's mutated and it's creating something. Now, again, this is information that I went into previously. You might remember this particular photo here. And I went into the fact of, what's happening when they're doing this, when they're trying to stick you with this one. And I explained what was happening in the fact that they're trying to to crystallize and block off, if you like, create a shield around your third eye. So that kind of like disconnects you to a certain point. And obviously, once you disconnect one circuit, you need to recreate a new circuit. And that's what you're seeing here. You're seeing something that that's very small, looks very, innocent, and it's addressed to you in an innocent way. But when it's in you and it's given auxiliary devices or increase in force, power, pressure, or effectiveness, ultimately it mutates. And like I explained before, they've carried out experiments before where they understand that once they put these things in you, it mutates. This article here, it says, I'm just trying to get back to the point. It says here, genetic information in the thing leads to creation of a patented mutant. So once they input this thing in you, they give you the auxiliary device to increase its force and effectiveness. They create a circuit around you. Now, if you were to drop down dead and we cut you open, we might find that circuit. And we say that circuit looks like your own circuits that were in there already, but they look a bit different. We don't think they're natural. And, if you were to, for example, feed radio wave signals to these circuits, they would transmit back and forth, as they've done experiments before. They've done it with a ball, and you can see here they've done it with this beetle. I believe it's a beetle. So, ultimately, this is all to take man into the fourth industrial revolution, which is something that they're pushing at the minute. And this is, all leading to putting human beings on the Internet of Things. So don't forget, part of this particular prophecy, like I say, is to have, something placed in your forehead or your hand. And ultimately, it's going to have to connect to things around you in order to read what's happening in your body. I mentioned before, obviously, having it in your forehead will more likely to be with people who have disabilities. This devil will make it seem like he can make miracles happen. And to do that, if you were to place something in the forehead, and you were then to cure disability, you would then need to send signals around the body in order to override what the body's already doing and make the function possible. With that, they could obviously have you to a point where you can now see interface within your sight. You don't actually have to have a physical screen. And that's one thing I mentioned before. Again, what you can see on the side of her head is obviously transmitting some sort of signal into her mind to allow her to see it. So again, we're going back to the signals, and we're going back to affecting, what's ever happening inside the human body. Now, ultimately, I've mentioned before, this is all leading back to human augmentation. And when you follow the process, you start off with basics, glasses, contact lenses, laser eye surgery, and then you move into the high-tech, scientific, slightly more scientific ways. You have binoculars, night vision goggles, or gene-edited for enhanced sight. So the clues in what they're showing you, gene-edited, and that's what they're trying to do ultimately. So this particular lady, if you were to have some sort of device placed within her, A, to identify, and for her to use in transactions, but then also B, to connect, around her body and have this circuit, she could have this whole world of sensory and vision going on within her for her to feel like things are happening when they're not really happening. It kind of leads back to the metaverse and the metaverse. So, this all leads back to, like I say, what they were trying to input into you, and soon to be what they will be trying to input into you, which is what you're going to come across when you watch this particular video. This is a separate situation to when they actually tell you to take this particular thing here. because now we have a digital currency. That's the only way you're going to be able to buy or sell. So you need to take the digital wallet, and the digital wallet is something that you will not be able to lose, so on and so forth. So they're going to push this particular thing, but in the meantime, they're trying to develop. It's like a big experiment, really. And if you think, it hasn't really been done on such a mass scale before, so it's a premier experiment from the banking elites and people who work alongside them. Now, one point I wanted to make is, I explained before, for example, 2021, 2022, they were trying to give you, step one. According to the video in Redacted, they're going to give you step two in 2025. Meanwhile, in between, they need you to keep coming back for these auxiliary devices that increase force and effectiveness. But but meanwhile, what they're doing in 21 and what they're going to be doing in 2025, these have jobs to do. And the job to do of what they were putting in you within 2021, 22 is listed here, something I've gone into before. So you see certain things listed on the screen. And we've got nano router circuits, nano codec circuits, communication with the outside. I mean, that alone just tells you what's actually happening. You've got nano antennas, fractal graphene nano antennas. So, you're pretty much talking IP address once you took that first thing. But then ultimately they're going to come with a second thing, and that's going to provide another function, another thing to adapt the human. And don't forget, they want to take the human being into this artificial thing. So ultimately they're going to keep coming out. If Yahushua never came back, and this devil was allowed to keep running for a longer time, ultimately he'd switch everything to digital. He'd get you to have that chip in your hand. That's your buying, your selling. He can cut you off the system anytime he wants. And then he wants to understand your thoughts. He wants to understand, when he says things to you and you actually agree or you don't agree. And he wants to read your mind, and he wants to know your whereabouts and how fast your heart's beating, and track and trace to the max. So, with that, they've got to adapt you and make you, the signal, make you the iPhone. So they've got to implement things in you. 2021, 22 was one thing that they one type of change that they tried to make. And 2025 is going to be another change they're trying to make. If they were to carry on for longer, they will probably pull another one out in 2028, 29, another one out in 2025. And each time they're pretty much saying to you that your software needs an update. Meanwhile, you're going back for your auxiliary devices to increase the force and effectiveness to help it mutate. While it's mutating, shit's growing inside you. Now, this shit here that they're pulling out of people is pretty much a man-made tendon. And I've gone into that before. Now, a tendon is things that you have, to describe it to on a basic level. And you have your body, you have your skeleton, you have your muscles, and then you have tendons. And your tendons wrap around your muscles and your joints. And then, they wrap around your muscles and they come together, your joints, they pass through your joints, and then they expand and go around the next muscle, and then they come back together and they go around the next joint. And these tendons go from your feet, your toes, every part of your body, all the way back up to your brain. And they pretty much read signals. And that is your electrical circuit to your body. So if somebody were to pinch your little toe, that signal travels all the way up to your brain, and you feel it and you know it, and blah, 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 and blah, blah, blah. So for example, if, people that have a leg amputated, it can take them up to a year, for example, to realize that their leg isn't there anymore. And if they have their leg amputated, they have to, have then a special leg put on there. But the problem that they have is when they wake up in the morning for the first year or so, their brain still recognizes that they got a leg, even though the leg got cut off. And it takes a bit of time for the brain to learn, oh, you don't have a leg anymore. It takes a year for your brain to learn, oh, you don't have that leg anymore. So is that where you stop now? You just stop in at the knee. Okay, cool. now and then when you start to wake up, you can feel that. You remember, oh yeah, my leg stops at my knee. But for the first year, you'll keep thinking, your brain is still programmed to think that you had that leg. So every time you get out of bed, you're likely to fall on the floor because you thought your leg was there, but it's not. So you've got this circuit going on around your body, and this circuit helps to, control you. You flex it, you pull it, you tighten them, and your muscles move and turn. You 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 can obviously we have nerves, but we also have these other things to send these signals, like these, like I say, these tendons. And so what they're doing is your body is passing electrical currents through them, and that's how the messages are going back and forth. Every 30 seconds to a minute, every part of your body will send an electrical impulse from your brain down to every part of your body through the tendon. And it'll send a message to say, is everything okay? And everything in your body will then respond back and say, yep, it's fine. And that's why you feel no pain. And as soon as you have pain somewhere, that message comes back, no, there's a problem here. And then your brain is then telling you that it hurts. Your brain then tells you, I need that to stop now. And that's why sometimes, people that get stabbed, sometimes they don't realize it. If you get stabbed in a fight, they might not realize it until afterwards, because they don't actually know, they don't recognize the wounds there, they haven't seen it, it's around the back, and they keep fighting. They think someone's punched them, and this is what it is. So, what they're ultimately, with that step one, I've gone into it before, what they had to do, they had to create a circuit. What step two in 2025 they're looking to do, I don't know. At any point, they could say you need to start taking this particular thing here, and this is the way that you're going to buy and sell. But in the background, they're developing you, and that's what this is. It's just experiment, a development to turn you into some sort of superhuman computer man. So first thing you've got to do to hijack the human, you've got to create a new circuit so you can control him. You can send messages to him, using radio waves, and you can get him to see things that aren't even there, or you can get him to walk again if he's never walked. By how? By creating a route from the brain all the way down to the leg, and then telling those, sending signals down there to tell the leg you need to move, and that's how they'll do it. Now, I've explained before, I had an incident where I cut my hand, and when I went through that particular part there, I cut through the tendon. And so, I said to the doctor, I can hear ringing in my ear, in my left ear. I can just hear loud ringing. And he said, yeah, because you've cut your connection, your electrical connection. He explained that to me. So when you look into it further and you look at a tendon, this is a tendon description and function. It pretty much looks like, what you can see, fibers. So this is like a cable. Now, you look at this particular picture here, you got it slightly more in detail, and you can see this particular thing sticking out at the end. Now, this is, like I've explained before, I've tried to explain before, this is kind of similar to what they've managed to mutate within these people that have fallen for the trick. And what they're pulling out of these people here, this pretty much reminds you of optic fiber. Now, when you look at, for example, optic fiber, this is something you use to, light or music. No, sorry, light. But they can use you can get fiber cables. I forgot what they're called. Optic fiber cables, pretty much. And I'm sure you can use them for sound. I'm not too sure, but I know you can use them for light. So this is pretty much similar to what they're developing. In your eye, you've got your optic nerve, and what that does is that also lets in light and lets a message pass through it, sends a signal. And your tendons are doing the same thing. They're allowing electricity to pass through them, messages to go back and forth. You don't realize it, but your brain is like a computer, and it's sending out messages back and forth to your body all the time. A little bit like the way that they took the car and they added an electrical brain called the ECU to the car. and then they sent wires all around the car circuit to each particular part of the car. And if there's ever a problem with any part of the car, it sends a signal back to the brain and say there's a problem. And the brain says, well, I'm going to tell the owner, I'm going to make his light flash up on his dashboard. So, what you're seeing here on the screen is pretty much the same thing. That was when I cut the tendon. I just wanted to explain, like, for example, you've got these tendons in your fingers, in your hands, and obviously once you were to flex each particular individual finger, you're pulling on one of these tendons, and you don't really, you don't control that apart from your brain saying, I want to pick that up. So the fact that your brain says, I want to do that, and now all of a sudden this message goes all the way down your arm, through your shoulder, down your bicep, up your arm, through into your fingers, and makes them move. So for example, you can see at the bottom, the extensor tendon at the bottom, that's the particular one that I cut. So with that, my thumb then obviously became floppy and I had no control of it. And, that was my tendon being disconnected. If this is like a tendon laceration. So once you cut that, you're cutting the route for the signal, and that's what I explained a minute ago. When you're every 30 seconds to a minute, your brain sends electrical signal out through your tendons to each particular part of your body, your fingers, your toes, whatever, and it says, is everything all right? And it sends another message back, say, yeah, everything's cool. And so you don't feel anything. But as soon as you cut something, you have immense pain. And what's happening is messages are coming back through this tendon saying there's a fucking problem. You need to fix it. And what will usually happen is this area, the reason why you see swelling is because what pretty much happens is the body then decides, your brain makes another decision. It says, oh shit, there's a problem. I need to fix something. First thing I'm going to do, this is what the brain does. It says the first thing I'm going to do is pump blood to the hand, because that's just going to like repair it and thicken it up. And obviously it tries to create clots to stop loss of blood in any particular case, because obviously the laceration has to come through the skin before it hits the tendon. So the blood pumps, and what you're understanding now is ingenuity of Yahweh Bahashim Yahweh Shai, ingenuity. And so what it does, the brain says, I better send blood down there, and then all of a sudden, boof, your hand swells up, it's swelling. And then obviously other things happen. A little bit like in your car, if you've got an air pressure sensor on your wheel, and it sends a message back to the computer, it says, I'm really low, I feel like my pressure is really low. It'll send a signal back. Sorry, that's probably the bad example. Let's just say you've got a problem with your gearbox, and the gearbox says to the computer, I've got a problem, sends a message back through the circuits to the brain, the computer of the car. It says, I've got a problem with the gearbox, something's wrong, I'm too hot. The car will not only say, I better flash up a light on his dashboard and tell him his gearbox has got a problem, it will also say, I better not drive fast in case I make it really bad. So what the car will then do, the brain, it will say, I'm going to force this car to slow down and not go above 20 miles an hour. And you will probably call that limp mode. Your car will go into limp mode. If you've got a problem with the gearbox, the car goes into limp mode to help you limp home at 20 miles an hour. And it won't go out of gear 1 or gear 2. And that's because the brain of your computer, of your car, the computer, which is the brain of your car, the ECU, that now knows there's a problem in the gearbox. I better tell him, I better stop him from driving over 20 miles an hour and let him fix it tomorrow. So your body is doing the same thing. I've explained before, Esau is wise. The scriptures tell you that he's wise. Esau is wiser than Daniel. I'm not butchering the scripture. And the way that Esau designs a lot of the machinery and the technology around you is based on the human body. And what he does is he reverse engineers and then he rebuilds. So to give you an example, what came first, the car or the human? Well, the human. And then Esau looks at the human and he looks at the shoulder. And he says, the shoulder's pretty flexible. Look, it moves in a lot of different angles, up and down, left, right, back and forth. Shit, that's pretty flexible. How's it designed? Oh, it's pretty much a ball inside a socket. Okay, now we want to make a car. Right, so we want the front wheels to turn left and right. So we want them to be very flexible and we want them to turn and twist in all sorts of angles and be free. What we're going to do, we're going to put a shoulder joint. What we're going to call it? We're going to call it a ball joint because that's what it is. It's a ball inside a joint. And so that's reverse engineering a shoulder, reverse engineering it, breaking it down, understanding what it is, rebuilding it on a car out of metal, calling it a ball joint. And that's the only reason why your car can turn left and right so smoothly, without like and all that kind of nonsense. So, this is what it is. Don't forget, even your heart, when your heart gives up, Esau will come along and try and resuscitate you. And what will he do? He'll use a defibrillator. And that's when you get the 1, 2, 3, clear, bang. And ultimately what that's doing, that's sending another shock, electrical shock through you to get that heart jolted into action. And once it's into action, it works off that, rhythm motion. So, electrical currents traveling around your body in order for your body to operate, understand, feel, and know what's going on with your body, is a very big thing. And now you've had step one where they've tried to hijack this. And then, like I say, they've tried to then ultimately give you, let's go back to it, they've tried to give you an auxiliary device to increase force, power, pressure, or effectiveness. And then it's mutated. Some people haven't handled it and they've pretty much keeled over. People complain of clots and so on and so forth. I'm not even going to start going into it because the algorithm is going to pick it up. But I work in an emergency room reception, and you see them coming in, and I feel like I've got something inside of my head. I feel like I've got something in my chest. I don't know what it is. I feel like I've got something there, something here. Yeah, because you've got shit mutating inside you. All it takes is one question. Did you take the thing? Yes, I did. There you go. And like I say, this is something I brought out probably a year ago, a little bit longer. But as time goes by, we're seeing more of the agenda of these Edomite elites. And like I say, so ultimately now they're looking to come back with this next thing. And that will be a next phase, a next type of change that they need to make to you to take you into the fourth industrial revolution, into the metaverse, and to create these miracles. And then again, once they give you that particular thing, they're going to come back at you and they're going to say, oh, by the way, you need to keep coming back for auxiliary devices for increasing force, power, pressure, or effectiveness. Esau's got his plan. And if he could keep going, like I said, he'll keep giving you these things every 5 years, every 4 years. And it's just all he's trying to do is tell you that your software requires an update so that he can keep you on the Internet of Things. He can hijack you. And like I say, so you've got that part of it, but you've also got the part of it where you buy and sell. And this will be through the RFID microchip. And so this particular part can be installed at any time because all it takes is digital currency to be up and running tomorrow. And then, you take that and you can go out and use it. People are using it in Sweden today. A huge number, I don't know the exact number off the top of my head, but a huge number of people in Sweden are using it today. So you can take this part at any moment. All it needs is a worldwide universal digital currency to be up and running. 2023 is going to be a big year for that. If it's not up and running by 23, it's definitely going to be up and running by 2024. So this is the point at which we're kind of really waiting for, because this whole thing, this is when this whole aspect goes into the market of buying and selling. But meanwhile, in the background, they're going to keep trying to create these miracles and keep trying to manipulate you and what's inside you, and to control you and take you into this digital world, this digital reality, this metaverse life, and that's pretty much what they're on. Before I go, I'll just quickly get this particular scripture here. This is Revelation 16, verses 1 and 2, and it says, "And I heard a great voice out of the temple saying to the seven angels, Go your ways, and pour out the vials of the wrath of God upon the earth. And the first went and poured out his vial upon the earth, and there fell a noisome and grievous sore upon the men which had the mark of the beast, and upon them which worshipped his image." So this noisome and grievous sore, pretty much goes back to disease or cancer, something that's in your body that's pretty much destroying you. And obviously a lot of people will take the initial thing itself, the chip, the actual identification piece. That that's really what this is. This is the actual identification piece of it all, and that's why all you need is this to get into that system. Once you get into that system, they want you to live in this this alternate reality of the metaverse, and that's why they need to change what's going on inside you. But this particular device, people will have sores around it once it's embedded in it, when it's placed in its place. But also, obviously, this, what you're seeing at the minute, with these people dropping down dead, and they're pulling out these replica, fake black market tendons. This is what's happening. They're ultimately catching disease, and it will get worse. The more of these things that you go through, the more these particular processes you went through. Process 1, 2021, 22, 25 is coming, and like I say, if the devil was allowed to keep running it, and the more of these processes will keep coming along, and the more of these updates you need to keep getting, and the worse it will get. And yeah, a lot of people would probably die in that process, over the course of, like I say, 20, their fourth industrial revolution is 2020 to 2030. So a lot of people could die in that 10 years, going through this experiment. But that's ultimately goes back into depopulation. So I hope that was edifying. If I had to explain the MOTB to someone, for example, who's young, really young, who asked me about it, or someone who's not very bright, I'd have to keep it very basic and simple. And I'd start off with the most basics of fact, which is that the MOTB, just to keep it very brief and paint it with a very broad brush at the very beginning for somebody, you'd say, well, the MOTB is ultimately something the devil wants to give you to hijack your soul. And, with that, the Most High is unable to deliver you. And, looking at the screen and looking at the things that are going on and what they're trying to achieve, can you name a better way in this world, on this planet, of making that happen? There's no other way. There are musicians and entertainers who, sell their soul and go through these particular rituals or contracts with these satanic worshippers in order to gain the fame and the money that they have. But ultimately, giving up your soul to the devil at the highest possible, scientific, technical level that you can. This is the way to do it, and there's no other better way to do it than this. So, like I say, I hope that was edifying. Until next time, I'm going to say all praises to Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahweh Shai, Bahashim, Rakak, Wadash. Until next time, Shalom. Hey, gringos and Pasero, make way for the Bandolero. Cause if you don't do that, my friend, then your number is 0. Cause in time may come, now left my pistolero. 0.